So we'll start the meeting at 6 o'clock. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the first Mobility and Transportation meeting. My name is Rudy Sukol. I'm the Public Works Director here at Mount Lebanon. I'll be the staff liaison to this board. Since we're going to get to know everyone, I thought maybe for roll call, we could just go around the room, starting with Seth, and introduce ourselves and just a little, quick brief background about ourselves.
Hi, I'm Seth Davis. I have lived in Mount Lebanon for going on 3 years now. Prior to that, lived in the South Hills, but I'm trained as a landscape architect. And but I've been a active, passionate advocate for active transportation, assisting in writing our Complete Streets policy, and working on the Economic Development Committee. Prior to this, I live with my 2 kids and wife in the Lincoln area, and happy to be here.
It's Charlotte Ford. I'm on Beeland Drive in Ward 2, and I've lived in Lebo for 14 years, and I am a commuter. So I work full-time downtown. I always have, and at PNC. And I have 2 kids. My son's a senior, and my daughter is in 8th grade at Mellon.
Hi, my name is Lisa Herm. I've lived in Mount Lebanon for about 18 years. I currently am the senior manager for DLC for transportation. Prior to that, I was with Amazon Transportation for about 3.5 years. Where that was at the Coast Gazette for many years, as well as operations director.
I'm Tara Malavay Bab. I live on Greenhurst, right above the Bubbles, and I have 2 kids. My husband, my daughter's in 9th grade in high school. My son is in 6th grade at middle school at Jefferson. I work for Boomi. I work in IT, and prior to this company, I worked for DLC for 20 years. So, and I live in Mount Lebanon about 9 years.
Aaron Loth, lived in Mount Lebanon for 24 years, Sunset Hills. I was the former chief of police here for 24 years. Served a variety of positions in the police department. Now been at Carnegie Mellon University as the chief of police for the last 2 years. I have 2 daughters, one in 9th grade, one in 6th grade, and I'm an avid dog walker in the Sunset Hills neighborhood.
I'm Andrew Flynn. I'm the commissioner for Ward 5. I've been here since 2010. Let's see, professionally, I'm a municipal advisor, so I advise state and local governments mostly on finance issues, but on policy issues of all kinds of topics. I have 3 kids. One is back here behind me. He's home from college in Wales. I have a daughter who is at Pitt, and my youngest son is in 8th grade at Jefferson.
I'm Scott Green. I'm the lieutenant in charge of our traffic unit in the police department. I've been there 18 years now. I worked under Chief Louth for many of those years. I'm here to help out if I can, I guess.
And again, I'm Rudy Sukol. I'm the Public Works Director here at Mount Lebanon. I've worked for Mount Lebanon since 1986. I started as the golf course superintendent, became the Public Works Superintendent in 1999. I've been the Public Works Director for about the last 10 years. So I'll be the staff liaison. So I'll try to coordinate all the information that we gather and share amongst us. And I'll be kind of the person that you will go to either on Teams, emails, and those type of things. You probably already saw that with the emails that I sent. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth McCabe, and I've lived in Mount Lebanon for the last 11 years. Spent 10 years working at the University of Pittsburgh, so I'm familiar with that into the city commute and dream of a bike lane that may take us there someday. I have 2 young children. I have a daughter who's in kindergarten at Washington, and I also have a 3-year-old son. And I look forward to working with all of you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Paul O'Rourke, and I live on Roycroft Avenue. And I have with my wife Jennifer. We have 3 kids. One's in Chicago, the other one's in Monroeville, and the youngest is 10. And he is in Foster, and he played every sport imaginable. So I've been in Mount Lebanon for about 11, I think 12 years maybe now, and yeah, he's 10, and we love it. I grew up in the city my whole life, and my wife's from the South Hills, so I said, let's go see how crazy you're failing.
I'm John Reagan. I'm a structural engineer with the federal government. I'm a lifelong Allegheny County resident. I've lived in Mount Lebanon for about 7 years now in wards 4 and 5. Right now I live on Shady Drive East with my wife and 8-month-old daughter. I'm a hybrid worker, so I I go downtown 2 days a week. I take the T or bike, and that was the end of my list.
I'm Brooke Webb. I have lived in Mount Lebanon now for 2 years. My family moved out from the Central Valley of California for my job. I am the principal at Washington Elementary School. So very interested in traffic flow and pedestrians. 3 children, one still in California. He's a teacher. My oldest daughter actually works in education at Howe most of the time, but we'll be going back to California to finish college here shortly. And then I have a junior at the high school.
I'd like to recognize a couple folks that we have in the audience too. Mike
Haberman with Gateway Engineers. So we'll be working directly with you folks and Rudy on studies and things like that may come out of this board. I've worked with Lieutenant Green and his predecessors that were in the traffic unit for the police department on the traffic board since 2014. So a lot of those responsibilities will fall into this board moving forward.
Mark.
And I have 2 kids.
I'm Mark Quealy. I'm a Mount Lebanon lifer. I've been serving in some capacity of parking for the 40+ years for Mount Lebanon. I live over in the Foster area on Margaretta. Got 2 sons, a wife, and a great little dog. I'm the South Hills walker of the Foster area.
Thanks. And Becky Canteen is our, she's the public works secretary, and she's going to be assisting me with technical work here at the meetings.
And Sandy Merrick from IT.
I'm sorry, Sandy Merrick as well. She's with our IT department. Yes. And Ian McMeans.
I'm Ian McMeans. I'm your assistant municipal manager. The advisory board transition was really the brainchild of Commissioner Flynn, but I was along for the ride and helped out with some of the technical details. So I'm here tonight to do a little orientation for all of you on the sort of nitty gritty nuts and bolts of what we're trying to accomplish with the new advisory boards. So thank you all for your willingness to participate. This community truly is as good as all of our volunteers because you're the ones that kind of make everything happen in the community. You're willing to dedicate your time and talent to help Mount Lebanon be a better place for everyone. So thank you all. And myself personally, I've lived in Mount Lebanon for about 12 years now. I have 6 kids ranging from 1.5 to 12 years old. So we live in the Sunset Hills area and it's great where we live because we can walk to Dormont, to Brookline, and to Mount Lebanon all within like 15 to 20 minutes. So it's very convenient to a lot of places. We're kind of like on the hill above Keystone Oaks High School. So it's a great little neighborhood and I love living in Mount Lebanon. I'm one of those weird people that grew up in the North Hills and was willing to move to the foreign country across the America. So I love the South Hills. I've worked for the municipality for 8 years now. And I hope that I never have to work anywhere else in my life. So with that being said, I do have a presentation here and I'm happy to share this with Rudy. He can add it to your SharePoint site for future reference. A lot of this will kind of rehash the policies and procedures document, just hopefully with some easier to understand graphics. I know that when you read through that document, it can get a little wordy and verbose, but that's anything that happens that gets reviewed through our legal team. It's a little wordy and verbose. So welcome to everyone. As we've all been introduced, your commission liaison is Commissioner Flynn from Ward 5. Staff liaisons Rudy Sukel and Scott Green. And additional staff and consultants that will be helping with the board are Mark Quilley from Parking Enforcement and Mike Haberman from Gateway Engineers. Okay, so I wanted to talk just briefly about why we kind of did what we did with advisory boards and why the transition had to happen. So a couple of years ago, the commission identified as one of their priority projects a consolidation and reorganization of advisory boards. When we looked at the mandatory boards that we had to have by law, the true advisory boards we had, and then all the other external boards that staff and the commission took part in, sat on the boards of or were liaisons to, there was a whole lot of staff and commission time that were being spent on all of our board activities. So the commission really honed in on the advisory boards in the middle column and said, okay, is there any way that we can consolidate these and streamline things for more efficiency? So we had 10 true advisory boards. And when we benchmarked that against are comparable communities in the Pittsburgh area, we had a lot more than everybody else that's of a sort of similar size and scale to Mount Lebanon. So as we started to look at it, the commission said, okay, what if we go to 5 because there's 5 commissioners, then 1 commissioner can be the liaison to each board. That seems like a pretty good number. And so the commission really started from the ground up and asked the question of, okay, what are the 5 major areas of recommendations, input, and project prioritization that we want advice on from people? And that's kind of how the new advisory boards were born. So mobility and transportation is one of those areas. We'll use the shorthand mobility. So the commission passed a resolution last week that we can use shorthand names. So shorthand name here is mobility. So if you hear me say mobility, it's the approved shorthand of this board. But generally speaking, the boards are advisory. The boards serve in a function that the professional staff, the professional consultants, our engineers, our solicitor, any other hired consultants, and the advisory boards all provide input to the commission to help in their decision-making process. And the advisory boards help coordinate activities with the goals and priorities that the commission have laid out as part of their adopted plan. So we just adopted a new comprehensive plan. A couple years ago, we did a Parks Master Plan. There's discussions about a climate action plan. There's a Connect Regional Climate Action Plan, as well as other plans, an active transportation plan, and I'll talk about a little bit more later. But the idea is to help consolidate and prioritize and make recommendations on how we should tackle all of those goals and objectives laid out in those plans, as well as maybe some other things that come up along the way. So I'll talk some more about that too. And this really is the new advisory board structure. What we really want to have is a top-down model of policy direction. So the commission sets the policy, establishes goals, and approves the budget. The advisory boards recommend prioritization of projects or programs that achieve the established goals that the commission has already set through their adopted plans. With the comp plan, the commission every couple of years has a retreat, like a goal-setting retreat, where they say, here's our top 5 priorities for this year. So, looking at those established goals, the recommendations of approved plans is really where the advisory boards serve their key function. And then the commission, through the municipal manager, directs the implementation of policy programs and projects that have been funded in the budget, and municipal staff is the ones that actually does the implementation of things. So implementation always falls to municipal staff. The board really serves as the recommending prioritization and really that advisory nature to the commission. And our municipal manager, Keith McGill, is on as well. So if anybody has any direct questions for him, he's online too. So briefly, the commission responsibilities, serving in the liaison role to relay the priorities of the commission to the board. If there's any new priorities that come up, that's one of the responsibilities of the commission liaison. And also just to kind of serve as a guide and make sure that the board is focusing on commission supported initiatives, plans, and policies. One thing we saw with our previous advisory board structure was from time to time, boards would come up with an idea and do a whole bunch of work on it and then present it to the commission. And the commission would say, yeah, thanks, but we're not really interested in doing that. And then the board members would get really frustrated and sometimes they would quit. And then it wasn't really a good a model of how the structure was working. So we really want to have this top-down, commission sets the goals and priorities, and the advisory board gives advice on how to help achieve those. So one of the roles of the commission liaison is to kind of help ensure the board is staying focused on what the commission wants to achieve. And then during every commission discussion session, which happens before their voting meetings on the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays of each month, there's a standing agenda item for each commission liaison to give an update on the activities of their advisory boards so that the whole group knows what's going on. Staff liaisons, so each board has 2 staff liaisons, so Rudy and Lieutenant Green. For this board, they primarily serve in a function of meeting support, drafting agendas, keeping minutes, keeping attendance records. Obviously, everyone's here today. Thank you all for coming. As well as institutional knowledge with document storage, retention, record keeping, and then onboarding and orientation of new board members. So I'm doing this initially for all the advisory boards, but after this, I'm handing everything off to the staff liaisons who will serve in this function moving forward. There are some limitations on the advisory boards. These are specifically spelled out in that policies and procedures document that the commission adopted as well. So advisory boards and their some subcommittees do not have the authority to do the following things. Number one, direct activities of municipal employees. So advisory boards can't tell a municipal employee to go do something. If they want a municipal employee to do something, the proper chain of command should be that the board chair, we'll talk about that in a minute, should send an email or call the municipal manager and ask the manager to have something done. And then the manager could, at his discretion, choose to direct an employee to do something. But the municipal manager is the one that oversees all municipal employees. So if we go back for a minute to this one, there's a reason that advisory boards and staff don't have an arrow between them, right? Advisory boards don't give direction to municipal staff. Okay. Expend municipal funds. The commission, and by designation, the manager in some capacity has the ability to expend funds, but boards don't have the ability to enter into contracts. So, you know, if there's a project that a board might be working on and they think there might be someone who could perform that function, you can't enter into a contract with them. That has to be done through the municipal manager and through the commission for entering into contracts, as well as just performing functions conferred upon any other agency, and hosting or sponsoring events. So to talk more about the events, the way the commission has set it up for the advisory boards is with the approval of the municipal manager, boards can participate in municipal events or programs. So that means that boards can assist with planning, staffing, and event execution, as well as creation and distribution of educational materials coordinated with our public information office for municipal events with the approval of the municipal manager. So for example, some of you may be aware, we have a residence academy that happens every year. So that will now fall under the Civic Engagement Board, but a member of the Civic Engagement Board could assist with planning that event. They could sit at the door and welcome people to that event. As they could, you know, buy cookies and water for that event, something like that. You know, it's planning, staffing, event execution, but the board itself can't plan the event or do any events without the approval of the municipal manager. Yes, sir.
If I can, I know this sounds very like restrictive, and it's like, wait a minute, we're joining this board and now there's all this structure. I just put it in a little context. I can't go host an event either, right? Because I'm only one commissioner, right? Obviously, because this is a democratic framework, right? We have to work within that structure. I have one vote of 5, right? 3 of us can vote on something to convince the manager to do something to motivate staff to go execute on something, right? So there's a lot of layers. And sometimes there's just this confusion of, right, what boards can do and can't do. And it's just helpful to just have some context. I mean, there's so much work to do within this advisory framework. And I know it kind of sounds restrictive right now, but you'll find that it actually is quite flexible. Yeah, in terms of how it's just more about the planning process rather than it's saying you shall not. It's more of you need to work within this framework.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and it really is, since you are appointed by the commission to serve on an advisory board, you are members of the municipal governing structure overall. So as representatives of the municipality, there are legal restrictions on what you can and can't do. And like Commissioner Flynn said, you know, working within the structure of the government, we want to make sure that we're all putting out a consistent message together as one, that we don't have advisory boards out there hosting events on something that isn't in line with municipal goals and priorities either. Okay, so the overall structure of the board, 9 volunteer residents are appointed by the commission. Then you all, at some point, elect a chair and vice chair as well to serve in that capacity. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. There are liaison positions. We have 1 commission liaisons, 2 staff liaisons, as well as the commission also with the recent resolution put in place 2 positions for liaisons from Mount Lebanon School District to serve in a capacity to attend board meetings, but they're non-voting liaison positions. They can attend, they can take part in the conversations, but that's kind of at the discretion of the school district who they want to appoint to those. That could be school board members, that could be administration, staff, faculty, or anyone even associated with the school board. So for example, you know, it's at their discretion, but if they said, hey, you know, someone from the PTA might be good in one of these liaison capacities to a certain board, we're fine with that too, because they're still associated with the school district. But the school superintendent and chair of the president of the school board are both aware of this. So they aren't here tonight, obviously, because this is an orientation meeting mostly, but probably next month or so, they'll have liaison folks showing up as well. The overall structure also enables the commission to designate certain community organizations to appoint non-voting associate members to attend meetings of the board. So the commission has not yet appointed any community organizations in this capacity of associate members, but the structure is there to do that. The idea was we wanted to get all of our appointed board members on board, terrible pun, sorry, first, and get everyone, you know, comfortable before we started adding all these extra layers of complexity to the board structure. But we have that there if the commission ever wants to, by resolution, designate a community organization. So for example, like if the commission decided they wanted the Mount Lebanon Nature Conservancy to have a liaison role with the Parks and Recreation Board, they could appoint an organization like that. And then it's up to that organization to designate which one of their members, or if they're going to rotate, or whoever attends the meetings. But as of right now, we don't have any liaisons yet, but that could also happen. Those folks can attend the meetings, they can participate in the discussions, but they are non-voting members. So only the 9 of you that are appointed are the ones that get to vote on things. So advisory board responsibilities, residency. So relocating within the municipality is not cause for removal from the board, but if you do move out of the municipality, then you do have to resign your position from the board. Meeting attendance in order to count towards a quorum. So a quorum of board members is 5 out of the 9. We need 5 members to be able to have a meeting. The expectation is if you attend virtually via Zoom, like we have available, that your camera is on so that people can see you and that you're actively engaged in the meeting. Obviously, if you have some kind of technical issues, we understand. But the expectation is that if you're attending virtually, your camera's on and you're an active participant, and that the officer running the meeting will be in person. So if whoever the chairperson is, if they're not available to come in person, then the vice chair, if they're here in person, would run the meeting. Just to have someone in the room kind of running the meeting makes more sense. It's a lot easier to do that than to try and run a meeting from online. And then collaboration with liaisons, just making sure that your staff liaisons and commission liaisons have access to all board documents through the SharePoint site. I believe Rudy added you to the SharePoint team already. And then also copying them on all communications for the board, just so that everyone's aware of what all is going on. So that they're, you know, just so everybody's in the loop. So then if Commissioner Flynn gets a question of, hey, I heard the mobility board's talking about this, he's like, I have no idea what's happening. Like, we don't want our commissioners or our staff members to, you know, be caught off guard. So we want them to know what's going on and what conversations are happening. So just, you know, if you're sending emails around on board business, make sure you copy the staff liaisons and the commission liaisons. Okay, so the core responsibilities of the advisory boards: prioritizing and recommending goals of the comprehensive plan, recommendations based on other adopted policies and procedures and plans, capital project prioritization lists, a work plan, and an annual report. So I mentioned the elected officer position. So each board will have a chair and a vice chair. This will occur every year, probably in April or May. So if there is someone that may want to be board chair, you could vote on that tonight, or you could wait till next month and decide to hold off on appointing your chair and vice chair until next month. And so the chair presides over and facilitates the meetings, coordinates with the staff liaison on agendas, tracks meeting attendance. And on that last slide, there's a clause about if a board member is absent for 4 consecutive meetings or 6 times in a 12-month period, they could be placed on notice by the board chair. So that's also a responsibility of the board chairperson to track attendance. And then if there's any subcommittees that the board creates, to act as an ex officio member of that committee as well. And then ensuring the annual submissions to the planning office of capital project lists and annual reports. The vice chair basically just performs the duties of the chair when the chair is not available. So if anyone is interested in serving in those roles, I think there's a sort of placeholder on the agenda later on after citizens' comments that you can choose to elect a chair and vice chair. and that would be good until the next reorganization meeting a year from now. But if you're not ready to do that yet as a board, you can wait until next month as well. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. You don't have to wait till the end to ask questions. All right, some general procedures overall. One of the other things we wanted to do with this realignment of our advisory boards is to have some standardization on meeting timelines and meeting agendas. So the agenda you all have in front of you today is the same style and type of agenda that all of our advisory boards will have. So you'll always see the same framework for an agenda for all the board meetings. So it's very consistent and very structured. It's also based on kind of the Robert's Rules of Order. Oh, that last word got cut off. That was some bad PowerPointing by me. Whoops. Okay. Also the timeline for before a board meeting. So everyone on this board is an adult, and we're going to treat you like adults, which means that the staff liaison will send you an email and say, hey, we're having a meeting, please RSVP by this time. And if we get a quorum, 5 people that say they can attend by the RSVP deadline, then we'll have a meeting. If we don't have 5 people by that deadline, then we'll cancel the meeting. So one of the things we were running into with our prior advisory board structure was sometimes there would be people who wouldn't RSVP, and then we wouldn't have a quorum until like a day before the meeting. And then we're having to decide, well, do we cancel the meeting? Do we have a meeting? So having a structured timeline that's the same for every meeting. I think most people in the room mentioned they had children. I have children too. So, but we're all adults here and we can treat each other like adults and RSVP by a deadline. So
let me just add, the other important thing here is that, we always talk about transparency in government, right? And transparency is hard, right? Because it takes extra work. A lot of this is just about getting transparency, right? If we have time, we can post agendas so that citizens can see what the topics are, right? I work with a lot of local governments, especially out in California, and I have to submit my item to an agenda packet, usually at least a week in advance, so that it's published on the website, so that citizens all see exactly what all the elected officials are going to be discussing long in advance, so they have time to prepare. We've never had that type of structure here. We're hoping that we can start to do that because, again, with the advent of Zoom, one of the few benefits of COVID, right? There's now more opportunities for people to engage. They don't necessarily have to show up to meetings. But how do we get people to engage, right? Part of it is just getting this information out so that people are aware. And trust me, guys, people will always say, I didn't know. That's always going to happen. But if we are consistent about communication out, right, hopefully more people start to understand, hey, I can go see what they're talking about. And if I have an issue, I can show up, which is really important. We want that structure to be in place. So hopefully this, as we start to standardize and do this more consistently, we get more engagement.
Yes, thank you. So so 7 days prior to the meeting will be the RSVP deadline, and then we'll have the agenda posted the next day. And then any information that you'll need for the meeting will be uploaded to the SharePoint site the Friday before the meeting or sooner if we have it available sooner. So, we can just keep an eye on it, or Rudy can keep you informed if there's, important things that get uploaded in advance of the meeting so that the board can be prepared for the meeting. I have more information on the Sunshine Act later, but I'll talk a little bit about Robert's Rules of Order in a minute after we talk about the calendar of reports. So the idea also with the structure of, how we're trying to set things up is really based on when the commission approves the budget. So our municipal budget runs January through December. So every year the commission approves the budget and the capital plan in December, budget hearings in November. They by charter have to receive the capital plan in August. So everything kind of backs up from there for when staff prepares things. So from that, when do we need information from advisory boards? Well, if staff is preparing the capital plan in May and June and July, then we would like the boards to submit us project priority lists in May as we start to prepare it. So, the budget is a little bit farther down the line than the capital program, but the capital program works hand in hand with the budget too. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but just so everyone can kind of see, and there may be, as time goes on, more things that fill in this annual calendar. The board may decide, in September every year, they're gonna do some review of something. Maybe it's some kind of policy, or, when we have the active transportation plan done, maybe there's a review of that in October or something like that. So this can be filled in over time too, but I just wanted you to see kind of generally from the starting point of the calendar of a year, new board members get appointed in March, April reorganization meeting to vote on a new chair, and then so on and so forth, how everything flows throughout the calendar year. Okay. The project prioritization list that I mentioned, this is a sample from our previous boards, but as I mentioned before, we had 10 advisory boards and only 3 of them were submitting project prioritization lists. So our goal is to have each of the 5 new boards submit a list of priority projects that can then go into the budget to help the manager when the manager makes his recommended budget, and the commission when the commission ultimately has their budget hearings and decides on what things are going to get funded, that they can look at what the priorities of each board are side by side, and that will be very helpful. So the main difference between operating and capital is $100,000. So if a project is over $100,000, it goes in the capital program. If it's under $100,000, it goes in the operating budget. So that's just a real simple line of delineation to consider for kind of which thing project might get recommended on. And then each project should include some background information. So you may have like this priority list, for example, with backup on each one of these things, and your staff liaison can kind of show you the format that we use for our capital program, but listing out, plan goals, what goals of which plans does this project help achieve, description and justification of what the project is, and then some estimated project costs, including construction, planning and design, anything else as well. So the boards also have the ability to have subcommittees and ad hoc committees. The difference there is subcommittees can either be created by the commission or by the board itself. The subcommittees expire annually, except for the ones that were created by the commission. So one of the subcommittees or duties of this board, it was inherited from the old traffic board, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. That's Mr. Quealy's realm as well. So the board can create a subcommittee. Basically, subcommittees can do work outside of board meetings. Subcommittee meetings, because you don't have a quorum of the board, so they're made up of less than 5 board members. Since you don't have a quorum, then they are not or don't have to be open public meetings. You could have a public meeting where you gather input from people, but you could also just kind of meet on the side to discuss certain things and hash some things out, and then come back to the board and give a report on whatever your subcommittee was working on. You can have both the 9 appointed members and any associate or liaison members on the subcommittee. The one thing I will note, so obviously all documents still have to be shared. Just make a subfolder in your SharePoint site to share with the commission and staff liaison. If you want a staff liaison to attend a subcommittee meeting, you have to request the municipal manager to allow them to attend. So between all of our staff liaisons and other people that staff our boards, we do have a variety of different levels of attendance for things. So the staff liaisons will attend your regular board meetings, but if you want them to attend a subcommittee meeting, you have to request the municipal manager to allow them to attend. And then the ad hoc committees, by charter, the commission can create those for a 1-year time span to research any specific matter. Ad hoc committees are also allowed to contain non-residents if there's some specific topic. The last time the commission used ad hoc committees was when we did the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Initiative, and the commission established 4 different ad hoc subcommittees to study those different aspects of DEI, and those were kind of nested under what was the Community Relations Board at the time. So ad hoc committees could be standalone bodies, or they could fall under the oversight of an advisory board. So if the commission were to create an ad hoc committee to study something, it could live under your board potentially. So I mentioned Robert's Rules of Order. Robert's Rules can be very complicated, but for a board level, it's really just making motions and how the flow of the meeting works. So motions can be made by anyone except the board chair, and then you need a second. If a motion doesn't get a second, there's no discussion, it just fails. And then any appointed member except the one who made the motion can second it. So the chair is allowed to second a motion. And then it moves on to discussion. If there's any amendments to the original motion, that's a whole separate thing that happens. If there's just discussion, then you move on to a vote. The chairperson calls the vote. The vote can be done verbally. So, all in favor say aye, all opposed nay, any abstentions. If it's close, you may want to do a roll call vote where the chair would call each member individually and just say, what's your vote, what's your vote, what's your vote, just to make sure that we properly record things in the minutes, because we will have the minutes are the official record of our meetings, and we want to make sure that we record the votes properly. As far as amendments to the motion, kind of similar to the same process. Someone makes a motion to amend the original motion. You need a second for it to continue the discussion. You discuss the amendment, and then you vote on the amendment. So if the amendment passes, then you go back to discussion of the original motion with the amendment, and then moving to a vote. If the amendment fails, then you just go back to discussion of the original motion without the amendment, and then eventually. So amendments kind of have a standalone process, but it's pretty similar. And really, as far as Robert's rules go, that's the majority of what you need to know at the board level. Yes.
But the one point I just want to make on this is that these are business meetings. Yeah, a lot of the advisory board meetings that traditionally have turned into long discussion sessions. They go for hours. We're actually trying to, let's focus on the matters at hand and move forward. That's kind of the key point. And again, and Ian's prior point about the subcommittees, right? There's lots of opportunity to have discussion, right? And I think we want to encourage those discussions, right? These are topics that are meaty, that are worth conversations. But when we come to the formal meeting, right, let's kind of move through the agenda. Because again, people, hopefully citizens want to come, they want to hear, they want to give comment, and we need to keep things moving. So that's really why we're thinking about the structure the way we are.
And we want to be respectful of everyone's time. And for subcommittees, there may be certain people on the board that have an interest in a certain topic and other people who don't really have much interest in that. So you can have a subcommittee that works on it, comes up with a recommendation, presents that to the board as a whole. And then, the other members of the board that may not be interested in that topic specifically wouldn't have to, sit through hours of discussion like what was happening with some of our prior boards that had a lot of extraneous discussion. All right, so I mentioned the SharePoint site. Rudy's already added you to the team. So it is the official municipal document storage repository for all boards. The staff liaisons are responsible for maintaining it and inviting new board members to it. Any working documents that you might have for any board-related business should be stored in SharePoint. And the reason for this is primarily based in the Right to Know law, that based on the Pennsylvania Right to Know law, any public documents or documents related to municipal business can be requested by any members of the public through an open records request. If you have working documents on your personal computer and someone files a right to know request for them, potentially if that case would go to court or something, your computer could become completely open to a right to know search. So just to you don't want your personal things to get right to know searched. So save them on the SharePoint site and you'll never have to worry about that. And then you don't never have to worry about if staff liaisons have access to things or whatever. The beauty of SharePoint is, kind of like with Google Docs or whatever else, that anyone can go in through Microsoft 365 and work on the same document together. So there's a lot of shared collaboration available, that even if you have a subcommittee that have multiple people collaborating on one document, you can all work on it together through there. You don't have to save it on your own private computer or Google Drive or whatever, because you don't want the Pennsylvania open records officers going through your Google Drives. Save it on ours. And then before a meeting, we'll have any information packets or any backup info loaded onto the SharePoint site. And then after a meeting, the staff liaisons will make sure that Laserfiche is our internal permanent document storage, and IT will take care of posting the minutes on the web. One thing I will mention with meeting minutes, because this does come up from time to time with advisory boards, So at the next meeting, you'll vote to approve the minutes from this meeting, which means that they don't get posted on the website until the board formally approves them. So there is a 1 month delay on meeting minutes being posted to the website, but because everything is through Zoom and recorded, if people are interested in what happened, they can go watch the meeting. They just won't have access to the minutes until after the board approves it. And then that's also because if, you'll get a copy of the minutes before the meeting if someone's name is spelled wrong, or if you see something that you say, hey, I don't think that should be in there, or, I may have said it that way, but that wasn't the point I was trying to make. Can we kind of tweak this? Because the minutes don't have to be a verbatim copy of what happened at the meeting. You just need to kind of summarize the points. So we really want to make sure we get the key points of what people were talking about in there. Okay. Moving on, so the 5 advisory boards also align with the 5 major sections of our comprehensive plan. And this was one of the really unique things that we did with the comp plan. And I'm not aware of any other community in Pennsylvania that has aligned their comprehensive plan with their advisory boards in this way. So we are doing something unique and innovative here in Mount Lebanon, which is really cool and exciting. So the 5 major sections of the comp plan are also the 5 advisory boards that the commission has set up. And each board has goals and objectives laid out in the comp plan. And then as far as there may be other plans that either have been approved, will be approved in the future, are currently ongoing, that will also have goals and objectives to achieve. Boards can sort of formulate their own work plans. And then the priorities and recommendations in the capital improvement plan really form the core of what each advisory board will be discussing and working on and thinking about and making recommendations on. So yeah, the yellow ones are kind of the other plans that may happen, and things obviously could get added to that over time, but as a snapshot in time, this is kind of where we are right now. So the comprehensive plan is a 10-year plan of goals and objectives. So there's a lot of long-term, big picture ideas in there, and we're not going to accomplish them all in the first year.
It's pretty big.
Yes.
If anybody wants to see a copy.
Yes.
I'm all about hard copies.
Yeah, but it's very exciting also because it does provide us a roadmap, unintended for the mobility board, for where we want to go over the next decade. So one of the things the boards do is prioritize and recommend projects for implementation to help us achieve those goals that are laid out in the comp plan, as well as tracking and reporting on progress towards meeting those plan goals. So at the beginning, I said I'm your assistant municipal manager. I'm also the municipal planner. So as municipal planner, one of my duties is every year to provide a report to the planning board and the commission on what goals of the comp plan we have accomplished in the prior year. And once again, with the interest of transparency with this new plan, our end goal is to create like a dashboard on our municipal website that people will be able to see how much progress we've made towards various goals of the comp plan. So that's why the tracking and reporting thing is really important to us, that if we can get good feedback from all the boards into the planning office, that then we can plug into that dashboard, then people in the community, in the interest of transparency and open government, will be able to see how much we've accomplished towards our comp plan. Our prior comp plan from 2013, we completed about 95% of the goals in that plan. So we do have a very good track record of achieving the things that we set out to achieve. Okay, so let's say you have your own idea. The comp plan is very thorough and comprehensive. Other plans have a lot of stuff. The commission sets goals and priorities. But let's say you have your own idea of something that's not in any of those established documents. So how does that work? So the first thing you should ask is, can it be tied to, or does it further any goal or recommendation in any type of existing plan? If it does, then you're in good shape and can kind of loop it in there. Even if it doesn't, if it's not directly listed, there may be something that ties in or is consistent with one of those goals, you can still pursue it that way. If it's not in any way connected to an existing goal or recommendation, you should have a discussion with the commission liaison and staff liaisons to see if it's something that's feasible to do. If it is feasible, then during the meeting, probably during the new business section of the meeting or the old business section, someone should make a motion to request direction from the commission on pursuing this idea. And then, get a second, have discussion, vote. If it passes, then it will go to the commission, and probably in a discussion session of the commission, they will talk about whether or not they want the board to pursue this idea. And with the whole body of 5 commissioners discussing together, weighing, all the factors that they weigh of existing projects, existing priorities, existing goals and plans versus a new idea that comes up, the commission may say, yes, go ahead. And then your commission liaison can come back and say, all right, we can start working on this. If we want to make a subcommittee or whatever else to push this idea forward, we can do that. Or the commission could say, thanks for the idea, but right now we have more priorities that are bigger, so we're not going to work on this right now. And as I mentioned earlier, the idea of this is really to make sure that the board doesn't spin their wheels and do a whole bunch of work on something, then the commission just say, thanks, but no thanks, right? We'd rather have that feedback up front in the beginning for the commission to provide that direction rather than after the board's already done a whole bunch of work and provided a report. And in the past, we had a board provide a 25-page report to the commission on something, and then the commission say, thanks, but we're not interested. So, that could be very frustrating for board members, and we don't want that to happen. We don't want you to get frustrated. So, we want to make sure that everything is working in concert together. Okay. So I mentioned the goals of the comp plan. This is a very shortened version of the goals in the mobility section. Organizing mobility and access planning around the complete streets policy. You're fortunate that one of the people who worked very deeply on that policy is on the board. Developing an active transportation plan. So we have money in the budget this year to do a multi-municipal active transportation plan in collaboration with our neighbors in Dormont. Dormont is also on board. They also have money in their budget to do it. So that's something that we'll be moving forward probably in the summertime. Dormont has 3 big projects they're getting off the ground right now. And then once those are taken care of, the active transportation plan is kind of next on their list. And we have a few big projects, including the whole advisory board restructuring that the person who does the planning stuff has been working on. So that's kind of next in the hopper. Maximizing sidewalk availability. The commission approved a sidewalk expansion policy last year. So thinking about how to expand the sidewalk network within the community, protecting and promoting safe routes to school, planning and advocating for safety improvements on Washington Road, exploring solutions for curb utilization in Uptown. This was the consultant's fancy way of saying hey, there's a lot of double parking that happens, or a lot of DoorDash people that pull up and stop and then leave. And are there any better ways to think about how on-street curbs work in Mount Lebanon, and especially in Uptown? So some thoughts about that. That's a very open-ended one. And then supporting implementation of other mobility and access goals in the capital improvement plan, which is that the CIP, the capital plan, it's a 5-year plan, but we adopt a new one every year. So every year we kind of take a fresh look at what's in the plan. So if you go on our website right now and look at the capital plan, you'll see it listed as the 2024 to 2029 capital plan. And there's projects in there that are listed for 24. There's projects listed for 25, 26, 27. That doesn't necessarily mean those projects are going to happen in those years, but that's kind of an approximate time frame of, is this a short-term project that needs to happen soon? Is this a long-term project that might not happen until later? Obviously, if we get grant funding to make something happen, then we could expedite some timeframes, but that's kind of the overall structure of the capital plan as well. And then obviously our goal is to have the advisory boards be able to provide us with priority lists to go into the capital plan each year as well. Okay, so I know that's a lot of stuff. Where to begin? Funded projects this year, I talked about the active transportation plan. The commission approved funding for sidewalk installation on Woodland Drive this year. So we're going to be working through that project. Future projects with the complete streets policy integration, as well as sidewalk network expansion with that sidewalk policy. So as part of the sidewalk policy that the commission did, they identified 7 streets in the community where they thought it would probably be good to have sidewalks here at some point in the future. And Gateway Engineers did what they called a TSL analysis, a type size location analysis, to say, if you put a sidewalk on this street where there isn't one, here's where it should go, whether it should be up against the curb, set back from the curb, which side of the street it should go on. So there's a whole list of probably 25 or so street segments or street blocks for potential sidewalk installation. So one of the things that could go into the board's capital project list is to say, okay, we have these 25 blocks. Well, this one is one that would connect with another sidewalk and it's close to a school, and there's actually scoring criteria in the policy that you can use if you want to. So, you know, maybe that goes to the top of our priority list versus this one is just in the middle of some other ones. So maybe you should do that segment first before this one and kind of make a structured priority list for sidewalk expansion. We also have on our website forms that people can, for those segments where we did the TSL analysis, forms that people can fill out as a petition, so we can keep a running total of how many people in the neighborhood are interested in sidewalks in those areas. And those petitions have the ability to designate whether you actually live in one of the homes that would be getting a sidewalk in front of it, or if you live in the neighborhood and just walk through that area. So that's another potential input that the board could use to consider for making that priority list to say, you know, how much does this neighborhood want sidewalks to happen? As well as the other funded project that I skipped over because I have another slide on it is the Washington Road Safety Analysis that the Southwestern Pennsylvania Commission and PennDOT have been working on. So they issued a draft of this road safety audit. I know Rudy has a copy. I think he'll put it in your SharePoint site. So the commission did request that the mobility board provide comments and feedback on that draft road safety audit, so you can look through it. Staff is currently reviewing it, and the feedback from the commission was that we wanted one integrated document to send back to SPC and PennDOT. So you don't need to do a separate report from the mobility board. You can send Rudy and I any comments that you have, and we'll integrate them with our comments in a working document together so that we have everybody's comments in one place. And actually that road safety audit that they did spanned from Potomac Avenue in Dormont up through Cochrane Road in Mount Lebanon. So kind of the core area of Uptown and then into West Liberty Avenue in Dormont as well. So yes.
Can I speak to the road safety audit process too a little bit? So yeah. It's funded from a standpoint that they did one, but it does not, nothing in it dictates what PennDOT, the road owner, will do. So it is only one step in the process. I'm reviewing it in a professional capacity for PRT, Pittsburgh Regional Transit. I will also review it as a public citizen and member of this board. But the next step comes after that. PennDOT will provide comments and acknowledge it. That does not mean anything's changing to Washington Road. That will come next. And so when we talk funding, if there are requests that the municipality wants beyond what is recommended in the road safety audit, PennDOT will likely say we don't have funding. So there will be a component in the future.
Yes, and I do encourage you to look through it, and since it's, you know, PennDOT and SPC's document, feel free to be as harsh as you would like. I looked through it, and one of my first reactions was, did they even do a site visit, or did they just look at Google Maps? Because one of the things they recommended was using the 2 parking spaces in front of Sesame Inn as a loading zone. And I was like, we got rid of those when we did the Uptown Streetscape project. Those no longer exist, which they would have seen if they had come on site. So please feel free to send along your comments. So that is kind of the first task for the board, which doesn't necessarily need a whole lot of discussion at the board level. I mean, you can talk about it a little bit at your next meeting if you want to, but you know, you can look through it on the SharePoint site and send us your feedback, and we'll integrate them with our comments and any comments from Dormont as well. Like I said, Dormont's pretty busy with some major projects. So we're kind of taking the lead on providing feedback. That doesn't mean you need to look at Dormont's section in great detail, but Dormont, we shared the document with them for feedback so they can put their comments in too, so we can send SPC one document from both communities that says, here's all of our comments in response to your draft RSA. Okay, parking ticket appeal. So this is Mr. Quilly's room. This is one duty that the board does have. So formerly, this was a duty of the traffic board. The commission has appointed each member of this board as an eligible hearing officer. So you'd work with parking enforcement supervisor Mark Quilly, and basically how it works is if someone wants to appeal a parking ticket, they used to go to the magistrate to do that. But a couple years ago, the magistrate decided that he no longer wanted to hear appeals of parking tickets. So he delegated that authority back to the municipality, and the commission passed an ordinance that allowed the board to, that was the traffic board, now it's the mobility board, to serve in that capacity. So the traffic board, the way they did it was there was a rotation of board members. This board, you can kind of choose however you want to do it. If there's, you know, only 1 or 2 people that want to do it, you could just rotate between the 2 of you. Only one person needs to serve as a hearing officer for each kind of designated hearing. And then, or if everybody wants to do it, you could take turns and just take a month, and, you know, there's 9 board members, so, you know, each person could take a month, and if there's any appeals that month, you're the one that hears them. Or if you want to have a subcommittee of 2 or 3 people, or if just one person wants to just do it all the time, it's really up to you how you structure who hears the appeals. But every board member is an eligible hearing officer. Mr. Quealy, do you have anything else to add on the process?
Yes. Just one thing, if you want to decide how to proceed amongst yourself, that's fine. I do need one person to act until the next meeting, because this is actually part of the due process afforded the appellant, anybody receiving the process that's outlined in the ordinance. So I would actually need somebody. I provided Rudy today some files that are on the SharePoint. It's an example email. What usually happens is if I deny an appeal and then they want to appeal it to the hearing officer, that may come in on any time Monday through Friday. Typically, I'll hold them till Friday, and then so that I can accrue and, you know, aggregate any requests coming in, so you're not getting inundated with a bunch of emails. On that Friday, there's a sample email of what it looks like. It will have your username. It will have a password unique to the officer, the hearing officer, for that period of time that you're serving as. And then it will also include, but in the SharePoint is the instructions on how to manipulate and work through the ticket management system. It's called UP Safety. And you'll be able to view the ticket in dispute. You'll be able to see any history associated with it. I will also provide those files in that email. And typically right now, when this initially happened, people who served on the traffic board, you may have gotten 3 or 4 a month. Now it's typically just one request going to the traffic board a month, or the mobility that would be coming to the mobility board. There is a caveat, an additional side, that they have the ability to request an in-person or video request to have their hearing done. The traffic board preferred using a Zoom, and so far since that's been instituted, we've had 2 Zoom hearings. There is also a copy of a letter that's sent as a request form by the applicant that they would send to me, and it allows them 3 dates and times. And at that point, I would direct that to you as the officer, hearing officer, what best suits you. And within reason, it should meet the appellant's requests. And then I would then take, depending on, you know, the times, and set up with our IT, preferably a Zoom. If they insist on in-person, we'll have to reserve one of these rooms for the hearing. But typically the Zoom and videos has been acceptable to the person appealing the ticket. So that's the only different thing, but I would send you those. There's also a small little, can be changed and edited, a form of how the procedures are currently for the in-person video appeals. So, but typically a majority of them are going to be online. You go into the UP Safety website, you see the appeal, it will have traffic board, or soon to be mobility board member review. You look at that ticket and then you can adjudicate it in the software. And again, I'll be there to walk you through every step of the process. But some of these, their sample forms already in the SharePoint that you can look at, understand. But I do need someone to contact who you decide whether you want to do it on a rotating monthly basis or have somebody appointed for a period indeterminate amount of time. But I do need to contact now because it is part of the due process afforded as through the ordinance. So, and I appreciate all your help.
Don't everybody jump at once.
You did say we don't have any currently in the hopper, right?
We have nothing in the queue right now, and so it is. But by the end of the meeting, I think an action should be given or made that assign a person till a determined method is approved. I will need something at least till the next meeting.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that, Mr. Shen.
We have someone who's been there, done that.
So that will be under new business.
Yes, for the next meeting,
Well, for this meeting.
for this meeting, yes. Well, actually, since the commission designated each member as an eligible hearing officer, if
This
Karen,
board doesn't
did I
need
cross
to.
that correctly?
Volunteer, do we need to make a motion in order to ratify that or not?
I'd say you need a motion to establish the overall structure for, you know, how it's all gonna function, whether it's one person, a few people, the whole board rotating. But if you wanna make a motion, just to kind of work through, you know, try out the Robert's Rules process, you could do that, just to see how it works. But since Taryn volunteered to do it for the first month, every board member is an eligible hearing officer, so you could go either way. So, all right, cool. Couple final notes before I'm done. Couple notes on the Right to Know Law and Sunshine Act. So as I mentioned before with the Right to Know Law, all documents relating to public entity business can be requested by any citizen. This includes formal documents as well as emails or text messages relating to municipal business. So basically, the real key point is don't put anything in an email that you wouldn't say in a public meeting. But also, you know, don't text each other about board business either. Like incidental, you know, can I get a ride to the meeting, or are you going to the meeting? Like that's incidental conversation, that's fine. But more like if you're actually talking about like, are you voting for this or not? Like that's board business and could potentially get into some sticky situations that, you know, there have been cases where people have had to turn their phones over to the state right to know officers to search for text messages and things like that. So like I mentioned before with SharePoint, we have forums to do that. You know, you can do some things through email. Don't deliberate through email. Obviously, you have to deliberate through in a public meeting as a whole body. You know, if it's just two people going back and forth, sharing opinions through email with each other, you can do that. But as a whole board, all 9 of you, actually 5 of you, because 5 is a quorum, 5 of you can't make a like side email chain and make decisions on your own. You have to do that stuff in an open public meeting. So that goes into the Pennsylvania Sunshine Act, where any meetings with a quorum, 5 or more people, have to be open to the public. Any deliberations and decisions must occur in an advertised public meeting. So we put out an ad in the paper at the beginning of the year. So advertise all the board meetings for this year. And all public meetings must have a public comment section. So you'll notice on tonight's agenda, there's also a section for citizens comments, which is coming shortly because I'm almost done. The one other thing I'll mention with the advertised meetings, we do have a couple instances where holidays or other things cause some meetings to be moved. So if this meeting ever has to move to a night where there's another meeting, so tomorrow night, there's the Civic Engagement Board is going to be in this room. So if this meeting had to move to a Wednesday, you'd be in room D across the hall, and the Civic Engagement Board would be in here. So whoever's scheduled on a given night is here. If anyone has to move to the same night as somebody else, they go across the hall to room D. Okay. As I said, emails are not exempt from the Right to Know law. So that was why we just, you know, want to make sure we have a good email address for everyone to send all board documents to. That does not necessarily mean that your whole email folder is going to be open to Right to Know searches. But if all you're receiving is things that copy municipal staff, if there's requests for emails, then we'll pull them when we're able to pull them from municipal staff emails. So, you know, side conversations, try and keep those to in person or things of that nature, not through email. So there are court cases that hold that most emails discussing municipal business are public records. And that includes elected officials, board members, staff, and consultants. Text messages can also be requested. There's information on our website about the Right to Know law. And on the Sunshine Act, so it applies whenever there's 5 or more members present. You are allowed to have executive sessions to discuss certain items. Probably not many executive session items happening with this board. Some of our other boards may have some, but personnel matters, considerations for purchases or lease of property, discussion of any litigation or public safety matters could be done in exec session. You can contact our municipal solicitor, Phil Weiss, if you have any questions about that. The one thing I will say about exec session, though, is that you do have to announce, we held an exec session on this topic, and it can be a broad topic, but if you say, we held an exec session on property purchase. Well, someone could say, well, what property did you talk about purchasing or things like that? So you do have to be careful about what you want to discuss in exec session, because it does have to be announced at a public meeting and becomes part of the minutes. As far as, an exec session was held on personnel matters, or an exec session was held on litigation matters or something like that. So, but that concludes what I have for tonight as far as onboarding and orientation of our new board members. So does anybody have any questions after that marathon of information? All right, cool. I'll share this presentation with Rudy. He can add it to your SharePoint site. And if anybody has any further questions, this is kind of my warm handoff to Rudy and Scott for all of the board activities, but I'm always available because I am your assistant municipal manager. So I'm here to serve you all and help out any way I can. Thank you.
Okay, so I think probably the next business would be to ask if you folks wanted to choose a chair and a vice chair this evening, or do you want to wait until the next meeting and think about it, or not sure how you want to handle that. Open the discussion. That way I wouldn't have to talk anymore. Any thoughts? Want to wait till the next meeting and think about it, or?
I think next meeting.
Okay.
I think we handled a lot today, so
Okay.
maybe.
Yeah, just absorb all that and so
Maybe
forth.
give somebody a month to maybe think through it if they might have any interest in doing it.
Okay. So I guess we'll jump to public comment. Is anyone here for public comment, or no one here to make public comment? Anybody online? Vicky? Okay. Okay, so no public comment, citizens comment? Oh, wait. You have someone with a hand raised? Yes, Joe Brennan, okay.
I can't see this.
That's a lot of talk, yeah. Hi, Mr. Brennan, we'll recognize you for, you have 5 minutes to speak to the board here. He's still muted. Yep, there he is.
All right, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can, thank you.
Okay, all right, well, thank you guys, for.
Could you give your name and address, Mr. Brennan, before you start?
Oh, okay, yeah, my name is Joe Brennan. I live on 615 Briarwood Avenue. I've been here for probably about 10 years or so. I'm not originally from Pittsburgh. I'm a transplant that moved to Mount Lebanon. Which sometimes seems to be the rare thing. I guess my overall comment would be, well, thank you guys very much for being on the board. It seems like you're all very passionate about this and you care about the community. Part of the reason why I am here just because there's a section of my neighborhood by Howell Elementary School where the roadway crowns in the middle, in between Kenilworth and Briarwood, and it just causes significant sort of potholes and drainage issues. I'm sure most of you are aware roads aren't supposed to crown in the middle. They're either crowned to the shoulder or they're super elevated for one side or the other. My 10 years or so I've been here, it seems like it's constant maintenance. They just try to patch the holes and it doesn't really do anything. So it's just a yearly thing. It's a maintenance issue. So I was kind of just putting a formal public request in to either level, essentially mill and overlay, and that you just connect the one edge to the other, or maybe do a full replacement. I don't know if that's technically necessary. That's essentially it. I just wanted to raise that concern.
What street was that, Mr. Brennan?
So it's on Broadmoor Avenue. It's in between Kenilworth and Briarwood.
Yeah, I believe that's the private section there. I think that's where it starts at Kenilworth, and it goes out to Westover and Rock Springs. I believe that section is private there. So that's maintained by budding property owners. The brick section up to the asphalt, where the asphalt starts, that's private.
Now I know Rock Springs is private, but I don't think Briarwood is.
It is. That section, the asphalt section is from Kenilworth all the way out to Rock Springs, and then Rock Springs to Westover and Westover. Those 3 legs are all private. I'll confirm that, but, if you wanted to, reach out to me, my phone number is on the website and my email, and, that's my area of responsibility, so we can have a further conversation about that.
Okay, yeah, I will reach out to you. Your name again, sir?
I'm Rudy Sickle, I'm the Public Works Director.
Public Works Director. Okay, all right, yeah, I will, I'll reach out to you, yeah, if you can get confirmation on that. Yeah, I just, it seems like it's a constant nuisance every year, so.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thank you guys very much.
Okay, any other comments? Doesn't look like it. Okay. I guess moving on to new business. Thank you, Taryn, for volunteering that was one of the things I had on my list here. I wanted to check and see if everyone has signed up for the SharePoint site. Everyone okay with that? Any questions, any issues? I need to, I'll try to put all the documents on there. I'll try and keep it as organized as possible.
I added the complete streets policy.
Okay, complete streets. I'll throw that on there.
No, I already put it on there.
Oh, you did?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. All right, I won't have to do it then. Here, I'll add Ian's slideshow here, so we have all that for reference. And the policies, I put a bunch of documents in there already, so there's policy and procedure manuals and those type of things in there. Mark gave me some information this afternoon, and I added that in a separate folder as well. So, any other questions, comments?
There's a handful of policies that the traffic board helped with, like the marked crosswalk policy, the limitations on when you can request something to be studied if it's already been studied a year earlier. Like, do you want me to give you those to put
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Okay. We'll create a separate folder for policies, and we'll throw those in there. Yeah, and that way everybody will have them for reference. That sounds good. I appreciate that.
I'll get that on too.
Thanks, Mike. Yes, sir.
Obviously, we're talking a lot about roads and sidewalks. But yeah, having sat on the parking board once upon a time, we also talk about parking, right? South garage, north garage, all the new meters are all new, right? You know, so that conversation probably is done for a while, but that is of the purview of this board, right? So walkability, automobiles, bikeability, scooters, PRT, frankly, is within the scope of this board. Right, so all forms of mobility within our community, how we think about mobility. One of the key reasons that I wanted to see this board brought together was we had a parking board, which focused on cars immobile, and a traffic board, which focused on cars moving. But we didn't have a board focused on sidewalks. We didn't have a board focused on, you know, these other forms of mobility. And these are important topics. So there's a lot of meaty space here to be working on. I think it's going to be more of a question of how to stay focused rather than being bored. So I just want to kind of just give you guys that sense of scope. One other thing that I think about a lot, and again, I'm a finance guy, so it's kind of where my brain goes, is as we think about these topics, the right of way is one of the key areas as a community that we collectively as a community own, right? We have site control over all the residential streets. So how we think about that right of way is really important, and how it influences the value of our homes, the safety of pedestrians, the access to public safety, right? I mean, there's a whole range of topics. The utility lines. Right, Rudy and I get in this conversation quite a bit about trees, and we have trees in the public right of way. Is that a mobility issue? Well, you wouldn't think so until you kind of sit down and go, it's in the right of way. And we are committing space to trees in these right of ways that we have lots of competing needs for. So how do we understand these things, right? How do I understand the total cost of the right of way? Because it's not just the side of the street. It's the sidewalks, it's the utility lines underneath it, the sewer lines, the stormwater lines, it's the utilities above. Right? All these things fit into this right of way that we might be thinking, I want to incrementally improve it. There's a lot of meat here, and Rudy will tell you, we only tear out a street and rebuild it once every 40 or so years. So when we do it, we want to do it right. right? We want to be really thoughtful because these changes don't happen very often. So for me, a lot of what as Ian was talking about the CIP, for me, the question ultimately is how do we as a board and we as a community think about engaging residents when it's time to tear out their street and rebuild it? What do you want your street to look like? Right. First question is everybody goes, well, I know I have 40 feet, right? And then sidewalks on either side, or at least some do. But that's not the only way it can be done. That's the way we do it. But let's at least have a conversation about what other options are out there. How do we think about street design? I'm sure most of you have seen Arden, right? And the changes that were done on Arden. That was a 5-year exercise from the, I think, give or take, from the residents saying, we want traffic calming to those things getting installed. It's a long process. And it's an expensive process, right? And we want to be very thoughtful about how we use our tax dollars. So how do we inform people and have these discussions before it's time to tear out a street, right? Before we're trying to make these commitments. I will tell you, sidewalks is a topic that we get all the time. Seth?
I'm raising my hand to follow up when you...
Sidewalks are on, for the most part, private property. It's in the right of way. Residents are currently expected to contribute to that, right? But the question is how much public good is there in the sidewalk, and therefore should we collectively be thinking about sidewalks more? It's not the way we do it now, right? We expect residents to contribute. It's their property. It's benefiting their property more. But maybe we want to rethink how that is. Again, we're not going to change this overnight. But it's these types of discussions that ultimately are going to be those that, inform our long-term implementations, right? Because again, when we say we want more sidewalks, it's not that simple, right? There's a lot of pieces. So I'm hoping that this board can really be thinking strategically and be willing to engage on some of these meaty topics of how do we think about where we want to be in the future? Because I will tell you, this staff in Mount Lebanon, I'd put them up against any municipal staff I've ever worked with. They are very talented. It's not that they can't do it. They can do it, and they do it really well. The question is where do we want to go? Not what are we doing today? So that's my kind of framing of the topic, just from commission's perspective. I'm really excited about this board. This is one that's been long coming for me. I've been really hopeful to see this happen. I am happy to help any way I can. But I know you guys are all very talented and passionate, and I look forward to helping however I can.
Is there a way we could know exactly the state street? I mean, you guys probably know that off, but which ones are state owned? Does everybody just know that, or how would we know?
I can put that, I'll get it to Rudy. There's a map.
Okay.
There's a type 5 map of the municipality that.
Yeah, I mean, we have GIS too. We have GIS maps, but I'm not sure if we have one posted with ownership.
That makes a difference in the state.
There's also a listing in the capital improvement program at the back that identifies private streets, state-owned streets, county-owned streets. The rest are all municipal.
Okay, thanks, Keith.
And if they are state or county owned, it doesn't preclude this board from coming up with ideas, recommendations. It just adds a step to the process to engage those agencies and gain their approvals.
Does that make a funding difference too?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
But it's their site.
Thanks.
I think a follow-up question to that, and maybe even to the question about the private roads, is could we get a publicly accessible GIS, or is that something in the works? Because it is great to go there. There is a website, county-based, like who owns my infrastructure, and you can see all the county-owned roads. I don't know how accurate it is. It does list private roads. I don't know how accurate it is for Mount Lebanon, but it would be great to see this for, like, I love to look at maps and see some of these components. And I know Dormont had a publicly accessible GIS site. I don't think ours is publicly accessible.
Yeah, we have a public, there's a public access on our site. Go under Public Works and GIS, and there is a public facing map. Now, it doesn't have all the information that we have. We limit the, ownership and some other things for properties, but there's a ton of information on there. If there's something that you'd like to see on there that's not on there, let me know. And GIS is under our department, so I can either make it happen or let you know why we can't.
Yeah, it doesn't look like.
What does that stand for? Sorry.
What? global information,
Geographic information system. It's a computer mapping. It's Google Maps on steroids, basically.
And then, I guess for me, I want to understand the active transportation plan. What's in the RFP, what's funded, and how do we react to it as a board? Because all these things that Andrew sort of talked about, I've got a backlog of data and other things. We are in an epidemic of fatalities on our national roadways. So incremental sounds very bad to me. I have kids in first grade and soon to be kindergarten, soon to be second grade. I want them to be able to, it's a walking school district, be able to walk to our schools. I have qualms with our safe walking routes maps as they currently exist. So incremental is cost effective, but I think how we understand and react to the active transportation plan, because litigating each time, hey, we're going to do a roadway segment, what do you want it to look like? That should already be done in my mind from the active transportation plan. We prioritize our roads. This road will look like this. This road will look like this. When we repave it, we're repaving it like this. And there's a little bit of input, but we shouldn't be reacting to them every time. You get your big chance. We do an active transportation plan. We reprioritize based on capital improvements and grants and funding, but relitigating that every single time just opens us up to slowing down progress. So I want to understand the flow of active transportation plan to this and vice versa and moving forward, because I can't wait 10 years to see my kids be able to walk to the high school. A question of that is I can go on all night, but we don't have that. Castlegate Green coming online is a walkable area. It's currently set in the Howell School District. It has a shorter walk to Washington Elementary and Lincoln Elementary. How does the active transportation plan walk to that or connect to that? Shorter walking routes through Dormont. We're doing an active transportation plan with Dormont. So I think that's the first step I want to know. How do we flow in and out of that active transportation plan? Because all of these policies, there are many that a lot of people put hard work into that are done, but I think they are a little dated, admittedly, for where we are. I think Mount Lebanon should be a leader in these spaces, traffic calming, the request for data, these things. And specifically, we had a recent crash on Kelso Road involving a pedestrian. It's a walking school district. If what the data says or how it is, what is it signed? I think that is a state road. It might be signed 25 miles per hour. There's an exponential rise in chance of death from 20 miles per hour to 30 miles per hour, going up from 10% and beyond. You're most likely to suffer fatality. 10% at 23 miles per hour, it's 50% at 42. That doesn't seem like a lot for people driving, but that is a significant amount. So yeah, I want to move faster. That's where I impact.
Actually, I have two things now. With regard to incrementalism, I do think we probably have a lot of potential for easy wins, fixing problems we find. But the ultimate goal for any sort of improvement to a transportation network is to improve the default. Like we don't want to be fighting the same battle every time a road is improved. So I know as a municipality we can't rewrite the standards, the national and state standards, but I do think we want to make it so that any time that the folks at Gateway have discretion, engineering judgment, or I'm not a transportation engineer, so that they always default to what we want to push them in certain directions. Like, I perceive that our curb radii are usually too large. So I would assume we'd want to be like, make them as small as we can within, I guess, probably letting fire trucks through, stuff like that. So I think we do want to go after incremental improvements, but we also want to, from a long-term perspective, make it so that the default without resident input is still an improvement. The other thing was the GIS website. I actually did pop onto Who Owns My Infrastructure when Mr. Brennan was speaking, and I couldn't find a private section of Broadmoor. So I would be curious as to whether that was accurate.
It's accurate.
Okay.
I know all the streets in Mount Lebanon, so I can.
So it was.
Who Owns My Infrastructure is county based. It's not.
Yeah. I've looked at the site. There are many that are not marked as private that are.
Okay, so you're accurate.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
yes.
That answers my question.
I know that for sure. I mean, yeah.
And would that be reflective if we went to the GIS on the Mount Lebanon Public Works?
I don't know for sure on the public facing. I know I have it on our center lines, our street center lines, but I don't know for sure on, but we can check that, so.
Okay.
Typically, that CIP list that Keith mentioned
Yeah.
is the most accurate because that's what the police use for enforcement
Yeah.
purposes, for parking and so
Yeah.
forth.
We use that for liquid fuels too, so that
Mhm.
our reimbursements are based on our center line miles as well, so. Municipal streets.
So with the time frame that Andrew mentioned with Arden, is that totally not satisfactory to you? Or is it gonna be-
In my mind, the basis of Arden could have been done overnight. You could have put a traffic circle in overnight. You could have done what's locally known as the Dukes of Hazzard jump overnight. Jersey barriers, flex posts are very quick to deploy. It shouldn't have, in my opinion, shouldn't have taken 5 years. But we don't do a lot of pilot. We do heavy design. We have an engineering support that designs it from the start. But it would be great to see a test, retest, change. That incremental I'm okay with. Pilot it, see if it works, figure out the qualms and the issues, come back in concrete. Like let's do it tonight. I have a map that I've closed several roads, not roads specifically, but allowing access, 100% access across the municipality is not a best practice from national standards, from the National Highway Safety Protocol. I don't want to come off as crazy. I am crazy, but this is a really passionate thing that I want to solve. And I think there's a lot of, like John talked about, easy wins where we can change things and make it safer for our kids to get to school, for our folks to get to work, for our buses to move better, for our bus stops to be better. PRT does not own the bus stops. The municipality owns the bus stops. We own that sign. So when your bus stop sucks, PRT will respond to that. But the municipality has a lot of leeway to make those things better. And PRT has standards and guidelines that we publish on our bus stops as well.
Well, I think that's the point. I'm not saying, right, everything has to take 5 years. But when it comes to building hard infrastructure, it doesn't. So the question becomes, how do we incrementally understand that change? And Seth and I've had this conversation. So I firmly agree that it would be great to put in, buy a whole bunch of the rubber bumper stuff and the flex posts. Actually, I was down in the Strip this weekend. I took pictures of what they've done down there. Lots of paint, lots of flex posts. There's lots of, artistic design painted on streets, right? There are ways to pilot and ways to test. We've never done that here, right? That's not in our wheelhouse. So we need to develop a policy. Where does a policy start? Well, for me, it starts at a board, right? And not that you get the final say, but I'm a firm believer that if you write a policy that is 99% correct, you've set the plate, right? You've set the dinner. Everybody else is going to eat. So you guys are in a great position to propose policies that enable this type of thing, that inform the CIP program to say, hey, or maybe not CIP, maybe it's the operational budget. We need to spend $80,000 to buy temporary, items to try pilots, right? We need to, purchase those things, so that Gateway or Public Works can install them so that we can pilot something. And the police have a mechanism to test what those changes are and how they work, right? These are all pieces that need to fall into place that I don't expect the board to do, but this is the impetus where that will begin.
That's a cultural change too.
But hands down.
And I agree, we need a way to pilot things, have a mechanism for it and a structure so we gather the information. But it also, the community knows that's the way we're going, so that we can not spend 5 years, come up with something and then everybody poo-poo it and say, oh, that's terrible. Why do we have a roundabout?
We're going to.
I'm gonna drive right through it.
They will anyways, yeah.
Yeah, and you're gonna have that anyway, but at least if we start the culture that we're going to try different things, that we want to get community feedback and we're gonna see what works best as a community, that's where we're going.
And I agree with you. And let me lead off by saying, I served my time, 24 years as an officer here, so. But obviously living here and walking regularly and, having kids, just like I think we've all mentioned we do, you know, we all have a vested interest in the safety of this, and I've seen the frustration over the years in getting these things done. I've had residents, I've been to my kids' soccer games and had people come up to me and talk to me about how frustrated they were. You know, so I've seen that. I'm all about trying to figure out ways to do it better. You know, the 5-year thing, I think that takes too long. I agree with that. I think anything we can do to try to expedite what was done long before, and even Rudy was here. And I know you've been here the longest, Rudy, but we're trying to undo things that were not done properly from the start. You know, we all see these new neighborhoods that are out there and being built in a way that we all would dream of, right? But we have to undo the failures of the past and figure out ways to move forward. That is a cultural change, because I know from my history of being here as long as I have, in the position that I was in, you get a lot from both sides. People don't want that change.
Let's say it's a good thing Pittsburghers aren't attached.
So it will always be Heinz Field.
Yeah, that's fair.
And you know, it's just, it's gonna be something that just understand that that battle will always be there.
Sure.
And I will also say, because I also speak from this perspective, enforcement is never the answer.
No.
So.
And keep in mind too, things are changing as well. Vehicles are changing quickly with, you know, EV technologies and so on, quieter vehicles, kids out. You don't hear those vehicles as easily. So there is a responsibility that we have too, to keep in mind, you know, that we want to keep our children safe.
I want to comment on the cultural shift idea, because I meet so many people who move to Mount Lebanon because it's a walkable community, and people move here with the expectation that it is something. And I think many of us around the table here think it's actually not that. And so I think there is a cultural shift. I think there are a lot of people who want it, who are going to be fighting with us. It's just bringing them out of the woodwork, finding ways to engage them. And I'm excited to be working with all of you, because I do feel like there's this energy. Mount Lebanon is very well positioned for these changes. And I think there's so much we can be doing. I'm excited to have you, Brooke, on the board as well, because my first passion is pedestrian safety, especially school children and their walk Washington Road. I just have been doing this for 6 months, and I'm appalled. It is appalling. So that is something you're going to hear from me a lot. Really kind of working towards creating better red lights for our kids, so there's a pedestrian only phase during school hours that allow the school children to cross with all traffic stopped at the same time. The fact that such things don't exist in a walking district blows my mind. So that is one of the main reasons I'm here. I'm also, I have a yellow e-cargo bike. Maybe you've seen me with my 2 kids on the back. So I'm also passionate about other modes of transportation and just making Mount Lebanon be what people move here thinking that it is. So. My piece.
No, I appreciate that. My office faces, I mean, the road, and I stand there sometimes. I've seen people hit in the crosswalk, and the amount of people that honk at children in the crosswalk is unreal to me. It's just not safe.
Yeah. If you've ever picked up a kid at the high school, they don't look, they just walk.
Oh, well, I think
yeah.
I'm raising old age, so it's
they don't walk to the side, they just stop and then hit. They're all like 4 doors open. I'll get you about it.
I think that's where the active transportation, like, my hope is it's a great framework to have this. Like, how are we moving people? You know, I was there early at Lincoln picking up my son and hearing the Go Zone logistics, the time invested on our educators to facilitate people getting to the school via transportation is a lot. Like, that is taking away from education hours. It goes through the whole gamut. So how do we rethink the Go Zone? How do we think about these things? There are so many, I'm gonna miss our next meeting. This is full disclosure, because I'll be at the NACTO Designing Cities Conference, and NACTO has a lot, they're the National Association of City Transportation Officials, and people that don't think Mount Lebanon's a city haven't been to non-cities. Like this, it is very much a city. It has a light rail, it has buses, it is a city, and NACTO has great guidelines from temporary to how we structure our organizations to all these things. And I might, Rudy, if it's okay, make a folder and just drop reference files from different orgs in there. The federal government is finally talking the language on safe streets from a safe systems approach. Like, nobody should be injured or hurt or especially killed on our streets. Like that's sort of the baseline of the safe systems approach. And I'd love that to be the foundation of the active transportation plan from selfishly a funding standpoint. If we set up the active transportation plan to meet the metrics of the safe systems approach, it unlocks our capability for funding. If anyone's been watching, that's why the city of Pittsburgh adopted their Vision Zero plan. They missed out on funding because of their lack of a Vision Zero plan. So setting ourselves up to be ready for those national metrics, those other metrics, really sets the stage for the future.
Got a group of passionate people.
See that? Yeah. Well, thanks for everyone's comments. Appreciate it. I'm sorry.
Next.
Okay. Well, first of all, the last thing that I wanted to check, just make sure is everyone okay with digital format as far as agendas and all that type of thing? We can print them out and bring them in, but you know, I'm all for the less paper, the better. So I'll just post them on the website or on the SharePoint, and everyone will have them in advance. So.
I guess one more question, sorry.
Sure.
On the map thing, do we have also maps available, maybe if I don't know, there's somewhere of the paths, like the.
Yeah, there's static maps in there, and there's actually layers and built into some of the maps too.
I know a lot of people that were born and raised up here, and they're like, oh yeah, I walk through whatever.
I'll try to share some links. I apologize because I don't really use the website that we have our own GIS system, so I'm using AGOL. So I'm not really into that part of the system, so finding it's going to take me a little bit of time.
No, that's okay.
I'll get the links for you and share them out to everyone as well.
How citizens would know. I don't know.
I'll send an email with a couple links to get you started, and once I think you get in there, you'll see. If you're familiar with that type of mapping, then you'll see it's pretty intuitive. So.
Thanks.
Okay, sure. So I guess if that's it, last order of business here is to announce the next meeting date and time. The next regularly scheduled meeting of the Mobility and Transportation Board is Tuesday, May 7th at 6 p.m. There's a typo here. So it'll start at 6 p.m. All municipal meetings have a Zoom webinar component to enable residents to attend the meetings virtually. So I don't know if I can get someone to make a motion to adjourn.
A motion.
I'll second that. Second. Okay, we have a motion and second. We are adjourned. Thank you. Nice meeting you.
So I just went to their like, but GIS. So what you